Hello everyone, it's Trisha, it's me Jenny, and guess who got her act together for the Naked Truths and finally got her tripod from home? This girl. Yeah, hi everyone! Naked Truths, for those of you who don't know, and I probably just splashed water at the camera, so you definitely know now. Naked Truths, straight out of the shower, no makeup, wet hair, first take, one take, etc, etc. Most people choose to do it naked, I choose not to, but either way it's not a sexy time thing, it's a vulnerable and honest type thing, a tool for the vlogger to be honest on camera without branding or makeup or whatever to make you feel less you than you. And I choose to do my jammies, that's vulnerable enough for me. One take, first take, etc, etc. And yeah, so I finally got my tripod, woo! And hopefully the lighting's okay, I'm working on things at the moment. But yeah, hi! So this is quite a late video response to Millennial Burnout, which for some reason in my brain I thought that the Naked Truth live videos went out on Sundays instead of Saturdays, which is completely stupid because obviously the live streams go out on Sundays and to do two things at once would just be a bit silly. So in my brain I thought I had one more day to get this filmed, and clearly I didn't, but there we go. Also, in the complete and utter vulnerable and honest way, I'm a little bit less than sober right now, just a little bit. There was plans to play D&D tonight with my home game online, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. And there was plans for me to go out with my work colleagues tonight, and because I didn't get back to either group fast enough, the D&D group, which I finally was like, I'm doing D&D, I'm not going out with my colleagues, the D&D group cancelled, and the colleagues, by the time I got back to them because the D&D was cancelled, had already gone out and I didn't want to go all the way into town. So I instead bought fish and chips and have been working my way through a small amount of Captain Morgan's. So just for the sake of vulnerable and honest, I'm slightly less than sober, but there we go. So yes, this is slightly late, but nearly on time, so nearly on time. There we go. I've also made notes, which is why you keep seeing me glancing to my right. I don't know whether or not it's your left. I'm very bad at telling whether or not the camera's flipped on YouTube. So hi guys, enough with that rambliness. So Millennial Burnout. I was slightly confused when I first read the title, honestly. I wasn't really sure what it was about, whether or not it was about perceptions of millennials or being a millennial and my perception of the world. So starting with my perception of millennials, it's an interesting one because I am very much in the millennial spectrum. I was born in the early 90s, and one of the things that I often have a problem with is I work with very, very young colleagues now, and they are, I don't know what the new version of it, a lot of them are born post 2000, some of them are young as 2002, 2003, which is kind of horrifying for me, but it shouldn't be. And a lot of them I constantly battle between feeling like they're amazing and they're young and they're invigorating and really great workers, to being like, God, kids these days, they're just so frustrating. Why don't they know what work is? Why don't they know how to do this? And constantly that dichotomy when I'm also technically like not that far off that generation, or still within the generation where I know a lot of people perceive me to be, God, that generation that don't do those sort of things. And I try so hard to be fair to these 16-year-olds to 18-year-olds who come in for a couple of hours a night, a couple of hours during the day, and do little things at work. And I try to be fair to them, but sometimes I find it so frustrating. But at the same time, I work with, like, one of the things I will be talking about is I work with a lot of older people, and they are also often frustrating, so I shouldn't blame anything on age alone. But there we go, I'll get into that in a sec. So one of the things I think that is the biggest problem facing young millennials, the millennial generation, is just the huge amount of information out there. And we live in this transition world where I can remember listening to cassette tapes and VHS and recording VHS. Like the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty that I watched as a kid was a recorded VHS. So I remember the recorded Tetley advert halfway through this animated version of Sleeping Beauty. I remember the Tetley advert and the Bisto advert halfway through the middle of this movie, where it cut to adverts in the middle because it was live on TV and then recorded. And I remember that very specifically because I watched it on recorded VHS, and I can remember tuning my VHSs. And I feel like, as a transition millennial in a way, like I know in my heart of hearts that if if the power were to go out, if we were to have this massive power cut for weeks, I could probably survive. Like, I can read and I can sew and I can use a sewing machine and I can attach buttons and I can write with a pen and I can, you know, I can entertain myself. I can go out without having to have technology on hand. I can read a map. Not very well, admittedly, but I can do it, and if the situation were to call for it, where there was a complete internet blackout, or if I were to be without my phone for a week, I could survive. Now, I'm very glad that I don't live in a world where that is such a thing, but I do feel like I know the world beforehand. While I feel like a lot of these younger people may not have that natural intuition for if they've lost their phones, what do they do? Especially with things like nowadays, contactless has become so regular that if, for example, there were to be this massive, you know, digital financial wipeout, what would a lot of young people, would they really know how to go back to using cash as a primary form of transactions? If we had to go back to using checks, what would happen then? Anywho, that's kind of beside the point, but yeah, as a transition person, I kind of feel like I can kind of, it's one of those things, I can relate to my older colleagues and the older people I know, but I also feel I can relate to the younger people, but often, and as I'm getting older and people who are coming in are getting younger, I feel like I relate less and less to the people who are all about their technology. Like, I don't use Instagram, I don't know how to use WhatsApp, I make a lot of old lady jokes along the lines of, what is these internets? What are you talking about, the YouTubes? Who is the Reddit? And that's jokes that I make regularly, but the number of young people now, like some of my younger colleagues, actually look at me like they genuinely think I don't know what I'm talking about, which is kind of hilarious, but a lot of the time I don't know what I'm talking about. I am an old lady in the body of a 26-year-old. Anywho, one of the things that I think is the biggest challenging thing affecting young people, or the millennial age, let's go with specifically millennials, is the huge amount of information that is out there, and I've made note of this, that we get taught now at a click of a hat what is best for us all the time. We know that objectively veganism is the best way to go, it is the healthier way, it's better for the environment, and yet we're also told that the best diet for us is maybe a high protein diet, a low carb diet, but you need carbs to survive. You have the pyramid scheme of what is best to eat and yet also what is best for the environment. You get told that the best way to lose weight is this, but you also need to maintain a good body weight. You get told fat is better, thinner is better. You, like, anything that you could want to find on the internet, you have information about, and every single one is telling you that's the best way to live, and each of them are different, and there's no, like, caffeine is good for you, caffeine is bad for you, wine is good for you, wine is bad for you, high protein diet is the best diet to maintain fitness and health, but you can't eat meat because it's better to be vegan, and around it goes, and it just goes through everything. And when it comes to things like social skills, similarly, we're constantly told, I would hate to be a parent right now. I really, really would, because things like there are books and there are apps and there are blogs about how much you should or should not breastfeed or, you know, hug your child, and if you're not hugging your child enough, is that detrimental to their mental well-being? Should you be encouraging them to be a unique flower, or should you be encourage them to have traditionally normalized social upbringing so they can socialize normally? You know, that is something that I live in horror of should you raise your child to be this individual, but then if you raise them to be an individual, does that mean that they will not socially function normally? And it goes around and around. I am so horrified of parents in the modern era, because there is so much information about what you should and should not do with your child. Well, you know, 5 generations ago, you know, you produced the infant and you raised the infant and you did the best you could, and there was, you know, you would ask your grandmother or your mother or your midwife for advice, or your priest, but now you have the infinite supply of internet information as to what is best to do, and that is so much pressure, because it is physically impossible to absorb all that information, let alone abide your life by all of that information, because a lot of it is hypocritical and some of it's inaccurate and some of it's poorly researched but well written, and around it goes. Things like education, what is the best form of education? There is so much information out there, how do you choose? Environmental factors, like, is it better for me to drive to work so I'm not, you know, is it better for me to bike to work, but then I am physically putting strain on myself and it is colder and I'm more likely to get ill and perform less well at work? Or is it better for me to drive, which is bad for the environment, but is it better for me to get the bus, which is spending money and then I don't have money for later? And it goes round and round and round. And when it comes to millennials and money, that's a whole other thing. You know, we're constantly feeling like we're not earning as much as we should, and there are studies out there saying said thing. But maybe we're just living in a world where there is less money to distribute around people. Who knows? There is literally no way to pin down the exact truth of the matter because it's a complicated world. And there's something that I was going to say about, I've just noticed my last point on this one, pop culture. Good golly, pop culture is almost impossible to absorb every single thing your friends are watching. And something interesting happens a lot with my colleagues in that they get in, a couple of them will get into a very specific set of reality TV, which I personally am not that interested in, particularly the shows that they covered. And because of their enthusiasm for it, and they'll have conversations with each other during their break times, and I want to contribute to that conversation, I want to be in that conversation, but I don't want to watch those shows. I don't want to change how my life is in order to be able to fit in with their conversation. And there is so much pop culture content, from video games to movies to TV shows, everything, that not everyone can physically watch. There is not enough time in the universe to watch everything that everyone else is watching so you can have an active conversation with them. But at the same time, are you missing out on social aspects of your life because you're not watching those things? Do you, like, the thing I struggle with is, do I want to waste my time watching something I don't want to watch just for the sake of socialising? And round and round it goes. But the thing that I was going to finish with is there's something that I've said to my colleague once or twice, and this is a particular colleague who gets quite stressed out about certain aspects of their particular life at the moment and their work and everything, is there's a particular phrase that I use to describe millennials, myself often included, which is so woke you can't get out of bed. And that's a thing. And I think it's a very reasonable way of explaining what millennialism is and millennial burnout is when you're so busy focused on the everything, the huge world out there, that you can't focus on the right here, right now. I'm doing the thing I need to be doing. Right here and right now, I can do this one thing. And it's something, I think I might have said in Naked Truth previously, something that I said in character as an NPC in D&D, which it's become like a side mantra for me, but I find it to be really interesting, which is, don't give me problems, give me solutions. And that's something that, you know what, even if they're in, I think there's something along the lines of, if they're, don't give me perfect solution, don't give me perfect problems, give me imperfect solutions. Because there will always be problems in the world. Always. So many things, and particularly like politically, that it's so hard to have energy left with everything you need to worry about with your day-to-day and the existential and the educational and everything else, to also worry about politics and the way that the politics of the today are presented, like reality TV show and like everything. It's very hard to keep up with what everyone else is interested in. It's kind of like you just have to focus on what you can do, and you can't do everything, you can't be everything, you can't watch everything, you can't be perfectly healthy or fit, you can't have a perfect education, you can't have perfect finances. Compromise is the only way to live. And I'm still learning that. I really am. And a lot of my life right now is incredibly decadent, and I'm very well aware that my life as it currently is, where I can, you know, roll out of my lovely bedroom and go to work and drive in my car to get to work, is something that may not always be there. And I've got to just enjoy the fact that so far this year has been wonderful. It's been lovely. It's been a ridiculous decadence, and I'm going to appreciate it for everything it's worth. And there's a phrase that me and my sister say quite often, which is something that I came up with again, which is so dumb, but it's something that I say, which is the long version. I think I might have mentioned it in Naked Truth, I can't remember. The long version is, in the history of the world, we have made it to adulthood. We have made it to adulthood, and we have not lost a limb. And we have not died of starvation or plague. We have not died in childbirth. And, you know, we haven't experienced extreme trauma. And we have made it to adulthood. Let's call that a win. Let's celebrate the success of the moment that we're in, because there will always be worse times. There will always be people who've had it so much worse than we've had it. And the way that I sum that up, that whole concept up, is the phrase, you still got a nose. Like, in the end, I've still got a nose on my face. I can still go outside in public and not worry about people staring at me because I don't physically have, or like, I don't have any massive scars. I'm not missing an ear. I'm not missing a finger. I'm not missing an arm. Like, I am going to celebrate the moment of right now because I've still got a nose. And it's something very silly I say to me and my sister, but if we're having a bad day, we'll message each other. I think my camera stopped filming. Oh well. I was saying, if me and my sister are having a bad day, we will phone each other and we will talk about our bad day and we'll air our misery, but then at the end of it we'll be like, still got a nose? Yeah, still got a nose. You know, no matter how bad your day is right now, you still got a nose. Oh gosh, this video has gotten way too long. I thought this was going to be simple. This is why I shouldn't drink before doing Naked Truths, because I talk like I'm motor mouth and then I end up going on so many different tangents. I also shouldn't take notes, but there we go. Carrying on. Trying to wrap this up quite fast. When it comes to millennialism as well, there's the kind of culture of overachieving, and I constantly feel like I'm never achieving enough. Never. I don't feel like I have the education that I always wanted. I don't feel like I have the physical fitness or the physical health that I always wanted. I really don't feel like I'm creative like I want to be, or I have the best job prospects. But then I also, in the end, I am the youngest ever woman in my position at my work. My housemate is the youngest ever head of a department and also the youngest ever female to be a head of department. And that's a freaking win! And as a side note, like, I feel like I don't have the best sleep schedule, and that's something I've talked about a lot. And I don't feel like I work hard enough. I constantly feel like I reach a wall and then I just kind of cut out and I don't do as much work as I ought to, both personally and creatively, out of work, in work, socially, whatever. But then I have my friends who tell me, like, you don't look after yourself, you're not doing right by you, you need to take a break, you need to, you know, you don't look after yourself. And I always feel like I'm looking after myself too much. I'm looking after myself at the exception of other things in my life, while my friends are saying the opposite. And there must be some truth to that, or else they wouldn't say it. So, there we go. I've already talked about finances, friends whom I work too hard. So generally, to conclude, millennialism is it's a strange place to be in at the moment, because you kind of live in envy of the previous generation, the golden age, the age that lived without the internet and baby boomed and worked hard their whole life without ever getting stressed out or ever, you know, letting the world crumble around them, and without doing anything like we do, where we're lazy and we're inconsistent and we take naps in the middle of the day and we're always attached to our phones. And, you know, there's a quote from Rome about teenagers where they're like, teenagers these days, they never get out of bed on time and they're so lazy. There was no golden age. There never was. There never will be. We live in a very different world, and of course there are different pressures, both socially, economically, physically, financially, whatever. There are different pressures. So that, you know, no matter how well our parents' generation or the parents before that generation seemingly came off, like, as much as we say the political strife right now is awful, currently, touch wood, currently we are not in the process of a nuclear war, we are not in the process of a physical war between primary, you know, westernised countries. And I do say primary westernised countries because there is war going on, there is genuine strife, there is horrible bombings and terrible things in the world. But right now the political spectrum that we focus on is one that, for the most part, isn't causing physical warfare. And yeah, so as a side note, I am interested to see in later generations how the future will perceive the millennial generation. And I hope it looks back at us kindly. I really do, and I don't know if it will. I really don't. I can remember looking at source analysis for history when I was 14 and 15 years old, and looking at the propaganda of the newspapers during the 1930s, and looking at how different sides perceived the world and the political differences at the time, and how much of it was, you know, how much it was easy to look at the history of it and be like, well, clearly this side was in the wrong, clearly this side was in the right. And I am kind of terrified to see how the future will perceive this generation that we're currently in, this generation where politics is like a reality TV show. But at the same time, will that just be the norm in the future? Will that be the, you know, back then it was just not that very entertaining a show. Nowadays we do it more. Will it go back to a more sensible time, and they'll look back at this farcical political spectrum? Will they look at this generation where we're thinking about, you know, developing technologies in new and interesting ways, and thinking about environmental issues as a time of, you know, the spearheading towards something good or something bad? I don't know. But in the end, all we can do is live one day at a time and try and do our best. Anyway, this video is ridiculously long. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to edit it. Thank God I found some editing software. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to comment, and I'll see you guys all probably relatively soon. Bye, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.